So a few words of caution. I'm trying to apply the chrome spray I've used before, just this little strip. And one thing is it's got to go down in a single pass. So you've got to get just enough on there that the surface tension causes it to flatten out and look nice and be properly covered, because if you try to do a second pass, it starts to orange peel pretty aggressively and it's not smooth anymore. It doesn't look very nice. And then the next thing is, do not do what I did and put a gloss coat on top. So double mistake, 2 layers and then gloss coat. Gloss coat turns it from silver to gray, and so it's going to have to be sanded down and done over again. Anyway. Okay, that's more like it. It looks like a chrome strip and not quite as shiny as the original, but certainly passable. Looks nice. So for me, I'm happy. Let's see if I can remediate the other one and move on with my life. I'm starting to put all the panels on, and therefore I'm using shims. I've got 1.5 millimeter shim on the upper hinge here, just to get the door exactly where I need it to be. It's maybe a few tenths of a millimeter high, but I think it'll settle a little bit when I put a little bit more weight in the door, as I said, but it's looking good. Before I actually mount the fender that's sitting there on here permanently, I'm using plastic sheet, like adhesive sheet, just wherever the mounting points are, and a strip down here and strips underneath. So wherever metal to metal would normally be, and there's another strip down here, I basically put a thin layer of plastic in between, just to keep the metal from rubbing the paint off of it and exposing it. I'm going to have to run some sealant, probably just use some caulking along this lip. I'll do it after, I think. I'm trying to think about whether how I do that, just to keep the water from splashing up and into the engine compartment and making it messy. I may not, though, because I want to be able to pull the fenders off. I'm not going to run, at least right now I'm thinking I'm not going to run sealant down this edge here. There's only a small amount of it that's exposed because of the spoiler, so it's only about 4 or 5 inches that gets exposed, and I may just leave it open depending on how ugly it looks. The bumper's going to hide it, because I can have the carbon fiber bumpers are going to be tucked in pretty tight, so you probably won't really see that gap, and then it allows me to peel off fenders for maintenance purposes and inspect things rather than getting everything like put in and then can't get it back out. So anyway, I have to wet sand the hood. Got another coat of clear on that thing a while back, and it needs to be wet sanded, and then I can mount the hood permanently as well and get the latches. So running around the car doing that, and it's going to start looking good. Well, it took 2.5 millimeters on all 3 screws of spacers to get the gap. So it's fine. I don't have the hood perfect, but it'll line up at the front. So yeah, it's kind of more than I thought it would take, but anyway. So I've got the first set of side stripes on. You know, they tell you to do all this tape it into position and then pull back the backing tape and all this crap, but the backing tape doesn't like to come off, especially the small stripe. It doesn't come off cleanly. Like, it's much better to just fucking yank the pieces off individually Make sure you've got Windex on the panel, and maybe some Windex actually on the glue side, and just align it, you know. Just the idea that you're going to somehow position this thing perfectly and squeeze it on, it's bullshit. You're going to just wet it, drop it on, move it around. It'll glide easily on the Windex, and then you can start, once you've positioned it carefully. And I use I cut a little strip as a template, so I could, because those two pieces are independent as soon as they're on, and then you have to kind of keep an eye on whether things are truly parallel or not. A couple things. One, I wrapped it around the insides of the panels there, but I cut it flush at the door, because I don't like actually looking at the sort of unfinished look when you open the door, where the tape is, the decal is sort of wrapped partly around on the inside. So I've cut it flush there. I sort of 3000 grit and polished most of the panels in the car, the old panels, because they just collect dust and dirt and a bit of overspray no matter how careful you are. So I got them all perfect before I started putting the decals on. Mounted my new panels, cut and the doors and all that, and got the gaps aligned, got everything finished, and then put the grill on. Just sort of screwing around, test fitting the spoiler. I will be doing the spoiler plus the fender flares sort of all at once. The fender flares are sitting on top right now. So got to get the side stripes on first, then I can put the fender flares and the front spoiler on. And then I'll try to reapply the rear hatch decal. I tried doing it last year and I fucked it up. I actually got some grit underneath the decal and didn't realize it. I thought it was moisture and I was trying to squeeze it out, and it was like, oh, it was actually crap in behind. I somehow got some dirt. But so I got all my gaps right for my hood, and again, we polished the hood, and yeah, we're starting to look like progress. And as soon as I got all that stuff on, I get the windows and doors together. I get to do the bumpers, the carbon fiber bumpers, and that'll be the sort of the piece that makes the exterior look perfect. And then what I've done with the carbon fiber bumpers is use the Euro metal bumper design. I'll be tucking it in close to the body, leaving about a 3/4 inch gap, and then I'll make my own custom plastic side plates that look like the US plates. It's just that everything's scaled down 1/3 smaller, so the bumpers are not quite as heavy looking. Kind of like the US bumpers, I just don't like the heaviness of them. So we'll see how my custom design turns out. And I also cut polished all of the blend lines wherever I was touching up. So for instance, I had some bubbles here in the paint, and so I reshot this and then blended it in here. So it's just this narrow little piece on both sides. Actually, I did it and repaired the piece in the lower valence and such. So anyway, there we go. So I'm doing the hatch decals now, and just to be a little bit more specific about my approach. So I'm not doing them all at once, obviously. I'm doing bottom and then one side, the other side, then the top. I sort of pre-laid them out a little bit, so I got an idea of where I want the edges to be. But I want to talk about how this material responds to heat and Windex, which should be your wetting agent, or glass cleaner. Basically, this material, when you peel it away from the backing, your hand should be wet, the surface should be wet. I spray this material as I'm pulling it back, but it's very easy to wrinkle it and stretch it and wreck it. And if you do stretch it and it gets a wrinkle in it, heat gun on moderate heat on the low setting from a fair distance away, if you're patient, it will shrink it back. And I got a little tiny wrinkle, so when you're pulling it back, it's really important that you have even pressure. So get an edge, try to get it all the way across, and then as you peel it back and you're pulling the black strip off. So it's a double process. You pull off the first side, wet it, pull off the second side, keep wetting it, and just have slippery fingers, just keep everything wet. Do not touch it against anything, do not pick up any dirt. You definitely don't want to get dirt underneath this, so you wreck it. So surface, everything has to be clean. But be really, really slow and gentle peeling it back, and make sure you don't get any wrinkles. It'll stretch a little bit. It's kind of impossible not to stretch it a little bit, but it'll eventually flatten out if you're patient with it. So, and as I say, I'm certainly not trying to do the whole thing at once. That would just be insane. And I did all those individually on the car on both sides, and it worked out great. So I'll keep you in the loop as I progress here. So the two side pieces are done, and I'm just going to put the top one on now. So yeah, just slow and steady, piece by piece. Keep it wet and move it around until you get it where you want it, and then start squeegeeing it and start wiping it dry, and it'll slowly, with some heat, moderate heat, shrink a little bit and smooth itself out. So it's quite rewarding actually when you get into it. Boom, and she's done. So put the plexiglass surround in, and the lock and the GTI and Volkswagen livery, and then the badges, and then I'll put the hinges on it and put it on the back of the car. So bumpers, the old bumpers are off for the last time, and I'm fabricating new ones. So I'm working away, cutting some 1x2 aluminum channel, and there's the old ones, nasty heavy things, and carbon fiber new one is going to have an aluminum channel inside it, and then foam, sort of a construction and insulation foam. So I will kind of cut and bend and weld the 1x2 to form inside it, and then that'll be welded to the aluminum pieces which I'm making here, which are going to be, these will be drilled, and they will have metric M12 by 1.5 fine thread nuts on the inside, and I'm going to have it set so that the bumpers are, as high up as I can get them. So they'll probably, the top of the bumper will be flush with this, and then I'll have the bumper 1/4 of an inch in front of the grille, sticking out the 2 inches approximately. So tucked in, a little more dainty than the original ones, but same basic look, just not as heavy. As I said, I'm not a huge fan of the original bumpers. They're just a bit too heavy for the car, looking that is. So I've got the front and rear aluminum pieces welded up. These are curved, and they match the curvature of the bumpers, and I'm building the extensions that come up from the body. Got all the pieces here I'm kind of working away on still, and weld those. I'll mount them, determine the exact length, how far out from the body I want them, the bumpers to be, and then I'll cut them and then remount them, and then I'll weld actually the bumper while it's on the body, just so I get it positioned exactly. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I've been working away on the aluminum internals. So I don't know if you can see inside there, but I've got sort of a bunch of angle brackets that are holding the bolts in place. I'll actually epoxy the bolts in so I don't have to reach in there and fiddle with them. I'll hold them, but they're being held from twisting by those little welded pieces of right angle. So I'm trying to just sort of mark and then cut these extension pieces, try to decide exactly how far away I want them front and rear. And yeah, it's interesting. So I'm going to have to tilt the bumper down a little bit, so I'm not cut at exactly 9 degrees. I'm going to have to be somewhat sharper than that. Same thing in the rear. I've already marked the rear actually. You can see the angle that I've marked on the tube there, because I want the bumper to be in alignment with the rear of the car. So everything is going to be vertically parallel to each other, not necessarily 90 degrees from the ground, because it's tilted a little bit off 90 degrees at the back on these cars. But I think you better have all these things parallel for it to look right. So anyway, I'm going to have the bumper 3/4 of an inch gap on the inside here, and as I said, about 1/4 of an inch on the front. I'm going to have the bumper start to, you know, maybe 1/4 of an inch out from the surface, but down a little lower obviously. So yeah, I'm going to mark it, cut it, and then I will weld it together, and then I will use foam to attach it to the carbon fiber shell. Oh, by the way, I weighed these things. They're 35 pounds, and at the very extremity of the car, that's deadly in terms of rotational inertia. So the new ones are probably less than 5 pounds each. So gonna save some weight here. It's good. Yeah, so I've got the front aluminum inner bumper done, and the skin sits on top of it and pops in like that. So it'll be fine. I've got it so that it's about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch. I can adjust it a little bit, but don't want it too far in, otherwise it'll look weird. So anyway, yeah, I'll get the back done now, and then I have to make the little blanking plates that cover this up, and then weld or adhesively, like epoxy, the little plate on, and then it'll be complete. Then I can paint it black, and then I can glue it in to the carbon. So it's a bit of an involved process, but can't complain. It's working out. Yeah, and the back is welded up, so I can make those plates now and then get ready to glue it all together. Yeah, and I got the plates on and mounted in the right position on both sides. So I will do the back plates, and then I will foam glue on the bumper skins.